Now you're ready to take your trip for your gap year and live across the world. And you've got your bags packed, you have your family members coming with you. Well, who have you forgotten? Well, Fido, right? So the family dog is definitely part of the family. And wherever we go, the dog goes too. And we got a lab, his name's Chip, and he is like a big part of the family. We would never be able to part with him. We went over to Europe and we had to ship him from Canada. So we ended up having an agreement. This was during COVID times. We ended up having an agreement with a pet shipper who worked on the end-to-end. And basically we had to have a number of health tests and vaccinations done in Canada, including rabies, and deworming. That had to be done within a certain time. Closer to the flight, and then the paperwork was completed by the pet shipper. We had a crate which we put Chip in, and eventually we discarded the crate, or we gave it back to the receiving company in the Netherlands where we arrived. He needed to have his paperwork looked at in the Netherlands and a vet investigate him. The whole process cost about $4,000 Canadian, so that's about $3,500 or $3,300 US, including the crate. So I would recommend, especially a large dog. Now, Chip's 100 pounds, so with a large dog, you need a crate, and the dog goes in the freight section of the airplane. It obviously depends on the carrier that you're taking, what the policies are, but this was our experience. So we had to have a pet shipper take it from beginning to end. Once we were in Amsterdam, it took about 12 hours to be able to see Chip, so we couldn't receive him from the airplane. The pet shipper company did that for us. Then we traveled again later on to the UK. The UK had a special set of requirements. European dog passport, you were good for the UK, but we didn't have a correct European pet passport because the original Chip had been done in the US, the vaccinations had been done in Canada. They couldn't be verified by our German vet, so he couldn't sign the passport and issue the passport to us. So we got denied on the ferry trying to get over into the UK because all the documents weren't correct. So the ferry date got moved. I had to get a temporary permission from the UK government as a result of a vet inspection in Spain. And then they let me on the ferry to the UK. Now, I got the Spanish European pet passport at the same time, but that passport wouldn't be valid for 21 days, which is the time, I guess, that it takes for the rabies vaccine to be valid. So we sat in the UK for about 6 weeks or 8 weeks, seeing some relatives, having a great time, loved the UK, and then we came back to Europe. And by that time, the European passport was valid, and now we could use the European passport for seamless transportation with the dog around Europe, including the UK. And I think there are some other countries that accept the European passport as proof of the vaccination and the health of your dog. You should check with the airlines and with the countries that you're entering what the requirements are. So you need to have the vaccinations up to date, and you need to have them in a form that the country will accept them. So in this case, neither the UK nor Europe would accept our Canadian vaccination certificates. I don't know what kind of international standard you might be able to use to show that, unambiguously that you've had these vaccinations for the dog. But so far, Chip has had 3 rabies vaccines, but the vet has assured us that that number is still safe. Now, once you get over into the countries, they vary quite a bit on how accepting they are of dogs. Now, we found that Germany was one of the most accepting places for dogs. You can take dogs on public transit, you can have dogs in restaurants, which you can't do in Canada. You can have dogs basically anywhere that you're going, you're allowed to have a dog. Sometimes you have to take a muzzle with you. The UK, the allowance in restaurants was sporadic. Some allowed it and some didn't. And there was no taking of the dogs on public transit. So if you have a dog in Europe or the UK, I would highly recommend having a car to take the dog around in, unless if you're planning on taking the train and you're in Germany or continental Europe, you're probably going to have an easier time with the dog. The pet medical care in Europe was exceptional. The prices are much cheaper than North America, and the service feels like it's just as good. Now here we are on the American Airlines Pet Policy site, and we can see that they have a section for carry-on. Carry-on pet is for small cats and dogs that can be under the seat in front of you for the entire flight, and they can be on a pet carrier, but it replaces one of your personal items that you have on the plane. If the pet is too large to fly in the cabin, it must travel with American Airlines cargo. So there is an exception for government workers or diplomats or military in that you can have a checked pet, but generally speaking, you're going to be looking at cargo. If your dog is larger, you're going to have to use American Pet Embark. So here we are on the Pet Embark site. As pet owners ourselves, we understand that it can feel stressful to drop off your best friend for a flight. So if I'm just on the Pet Embark website here, and there's a video here to describe the steps to moving your pet across, and then the Pet Embark toolkit down below here, you have guides on the date of travel, preparation. You can see the rates there. Basically, you can get the international rates on a spreadsheet, and then you can call them about the specific rate. Now, it only goes to a pet up to 100 pounds, including the kennel. So you have to be careful. If your pet is over 100 pounds, you have to call them for special service. A pet travel guide, choosing the right kennel, and that can help you guide your kennel choice. They have breed restrictions. There are also location-specific policies. And then there's breed verification forms, and you have to get certification from your vet as to your animal's health. So I'll leave this link in the description below as well. So we have the list of international destinations here, and you can see that the fees are listed here in this column. Minimum. Look at Portugal here. We have a minimum fee of $6.90, for example. So you can go in and browse that. Depending on your destination, you can see the approximate fee. Make sure that you check all the regulations before you go. But it's definitely possible to take your pet with you on a long trip. You don't have to stay home just based on having a pet. You can travel the world and take your pet with you. Just requires a little bit of organization beforehand. Good luck. If you found this content helpful, please like and subscribe.